The following transmission is a conversation with Jack, co-lead developer of Fallout, the New West, formerly Revelation Blues, a total conversion mod attempting to recreate the lost Fallout Van Buren in the engine for Fallout New Vegas. Across the entirety of the development of the Fallout series, there have been many stories that didn't see the light of day. Entire games incomplete or otherwise unable to be released. None, however, have become more famous, more mysterious, and more deeply investigated than the original Fallout 3 under Black Isle Studios, the final Fallout project before the IP was brought over by Bethesda. Over the course of our conversation, we'll talk about the process of modding for Fallout, the lore and canon of the series, and the franchise's forgotten stories that continue to captivate the community. I am follower Toshi, and this is the Atomcast. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to follow for future episodes, and consider subscribing to our Patreon for early access to new uploads to help keep episodes ad-free and to improve the quality and frequency of transmission. As always, links to our Patreon, as well as guest socials, can be found in the description. And be sure to leave a comment recommending creators that you'd like to see as future guests. Without further ado, Jack of Fallout the New West.
So, Jack, first and foremost, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Since this is releasing, I think a week before Christmas, something like that.
Yeah.
Around about
Christmas
there.
Huge as well.
Yeah. For eagle-eyed listeners who can actually hear Jack over my incessant yapping, Jack is having a very interesting holiday so far because he is not only Irish, but he is also in Australia right now, which for anybody who knows how the global climate works, Decembers in Australia are not cold. They are, in fact, balmy summers.
Yes,
so
for any hemisphere enjoyers out there,
right?
it is boiling hot right now. Down under.
So
yes.
So how does it feel to be spending the holiday seasons in the middle of effectively a desert?
Terrible. It's way too hot. As you correctly pointed out, I am Irish, so I'm used to cold and wet and snow occasionally if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, all jokes aside, it is nice to kind of change things up a bit. I've been down here a couple of years now. I'll be returning to Ireland in the next year, so I'll be back to the cold pretty quickly. The part of Australia I'm in is slightly less hot than, maybe in the more popular conceptions, which is, desert and kangaroos. It does rain occasionally. So yeah, no, it's fun. It's a very different experience to what I'd be used to when it comes to Christmas. And Australians, I guess, they have a slightly weird relationship with Christmas because of how warm it is. You don't really see Christmas trees in the same way. Yeah, it's just slightly different, but different is good as well.
Yeah. It's funny because I live in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, Portland, Oregon specifically.
Oh,
and
yes.
I've done research and stuff because just part of the wanderlust of being a human being is oh, if I wasn't here, where else would I go? But I am also very climate sensitive, so it's oh man, I don't really want to leave the Pacific Northwest because I don't know if you've ever been to my part of the world, but from what I've read, it's a very similar sort of climate to Ireland. Lots of rain.
Yes,
lots
I
of
was
fog.
just about to say, I think my understanding is the Pacific Northwest and Ireland have some of the most similar climates on Earth, I think.
Yeah.
So I think we're in the same boat when it comes to rain.
And
yeah, 100%.
And it's I looked it up too. I'm okay, what other areas are similar-ish? And obviously there's the simple, the easy ones like the UK, parts of Germany and northern France and stuff like that. But then I saw something that said there was New Zealand, obviously, and then there was some other island that was off the southern coast of Australia that weirdly also had
Oh,
like a
Tasmania.
similar-ish
Yes. Yes, it
setting?
does. Yeah,
What
it
what
does. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
what
correct.
is this? What is this magical island that exists in the complete opposite end of the planet?
So it's Tasmania, which is if you're familiar with Looney Tunes, Tasmanian Devil. That where that comes from. And yeah, it does. It has quite a similar climate to Ireland or New Zealand or the Pacific Northwest, as you said. It's really beautiful, actually. It's very very green, but also quite cold because it's the. I might be incorrect. I think it's one of the closest places on Earth to the Antarctic.
That's
Um,
crazy.
so yeah, like the sea to the south is the Antarctic Ocean. So like you kind of figure that out for how cold it will be. You know,
Right, yeah, that's crazy. So there are some parts of the world that are just like, how does it function like this? It's like blows the mind.
yes, absolutely, yeah.
For to the dismay of everybody listening, this is unfortunately not fucking Nat Geo follower Toshi version. We are here today to talk about perhaps the exact opposite of the natural world, video games. Specifically the Fallout series. Shocker. Really changing it up here on the Atomcast, where we've only ever exclusively talked about Fallout.
Really reinventing the wheel here.
Right, it's like that's what we do every single day on the Atomcast. We reinvent the wheel. That's why it takes us that's why we only do one episode of a month, because it takes us that long to figure out how to reinvent the wheel again. But we do it. So you are the co-lead of a mod previously known as Revolution Blues, which had a demo release back in February. But this mod is now specifically going through sort of it has gone through a rebrand, and as of the time of this recording, has released a new demo, because like I said, it had a demo drop back in February, but now it's having a newer, shinier updated demo releasing just in time for Christmas, when nobody has any money. But guess what? It's a mod, so you don't gotta spend a single penny.
So just a few quick points of clarification there.
He's gonna
Apologies.
say that it costs money. You better open up your wallets.
We will only accept payment. No, just quick point of clarification. The demo will not be released before Christmas. I should have clarified that beforehand.
Hmm.
Apologies. We are hoping to get the demo out in the very near future, but I would be reluctant to commit to as tight a deadline as next week. We are making very very quick progress on this demo, but I doubt it will be out before the new year. Just to be absolutely clear,
Gotcha.
and everything else you said absolutely correct. We have formerly known as Revelation Blues, as you correctly said. We released a demo, Burham Springs, which is one of the world spaces in our eventual complete mod earlier in the year. God, it feels like a lifetime ago now, to be honest. Back in February, it doesn't even feel like this year anymore. But
Right.
yes, everything else said is correct. And we have, as you stated, rebranded to the New West, which is the new name of the project going forward.
So you hear that, everybody? There is no mod. It's gonna cost you money, and it's all your fault, and your dad's never coming home.
It's vaporware. The whole thing's vaporware. It's
Yeah,
vaporware all the way down.
And you can only buy it with Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly.
But only the what would it be? Would it be the New West coin or the Revolution Blues coin? Which one would it be?
Well, we're gonna have a few different currencies in the game, so maybe Mormon dollars. You never know.
There you go.
We'll have to keep that a secret.
The Mormon coin.
Yes.
So from what we understand of the mod so far, it used to be called Revolution Blues, now it's called New West. Overall, though, what the mod actually is, and I'm going to say this politely, it is another attempt at recreating or just creating the fabled, the legendary Fallout Van Buren, Project Van Buren, which was originally what Fallout 3 was going to be. There was a guy on Twitter, Adam Lackow, who for like years ago at this point, I'd have to like
Yes.
go back and get like the exact numbers on and stuff like that.
I
He
think it was
like
2014, if I recall correctly.
okay, 2014. Thank you. He like put in the hours and was not only like recreate like doing his best to like recreate what Van Buren was, but he was recreating what Van Buren was going to be down to like the coding and like the way the game
Yes.
functioned. So it would have, for all intents and purposes, been Fallout 3 as a direct sequel to Fallout 2, as opposed to Fallout 3 made by Bethesda.
Sure.
Absolutely mind blowing. A bit of insider baseball. I actually was able to get a hold of him, I believe last year, and was going to bring him onto the podcast. Maybe I'll reach out again. But he effectively told me that unfortunately the project had been shelved for a while. You know, life gets in the way and stuff like that. And from what I remember, and I could be wrong about this, as I said, I reached out to him like a year ago. He has unfortunately put the project aside, which is very sad because from what I was seeing of the progress he was making, smacking the mic here, absolutely fantastic progress. What you guys are doing, Jack and the team at formerly Revolution Blues, now New West, you guys are attempting to do effectively the same thing with the story, which the story we have pretty much start to finish, not all the tiny itty bitty details of, but pretty much the entire story of what Van Buren was going to be. And you guys are making it in the Fallout New Vegas engine. So walk us through the process of that, the why you chose Van Buren, and the how of how, you know, how all of that is sort of like unfolding, and how the experience has been as a mod team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, that's really good summation. That's very accurate. Why Van Buren? I guess probably for the same reason. You know, it's probably going to be the same answer everyone else to give you. It has kind of a hold, I feel, on the imagination of Fallout fans. It's the big what if, you know, of Fallout. It really, it's just, I guess, the one that got away. It there's so much in it, both that was utilized in later Fallout games, and some of it's been left by the wayside that has captured minds for nearly 20 years, or over 20 years now. Actually, it's 2003, so it's 22 years. I guess for me, I really, really, really wanted to see a true 3D expression of what the classic Fallout games are. I'm a great lover of the classics. I'm slightly older. I played them all when they came out. Weirdly enough, Tactics was my first Fallout game, which is a bit probably puts me in a pretty small minority if I had to guess. And yeah, I've always been captured by those games. I like the Bethesda games well enough. I don't have the same level of vitriolic response that others do. But yeah, no, there's something about the classics that really speak to me, and I think Van Buren is a fantastic means and method to deliver that, you know, to a wider audience. Because to be frank, regardless of how many people say, "Oh, play the 2D games, play the 2D games," there's a large chunk of the Fallout audience that are just never going to play them. Realistically, they're never going to touch them. So, being able to translate something like Van Buren into a 3D medium is a great challenge, but also a huge opportunity, I think, and one that, you know, we've really enjoyed working on, and, you know, are going to continue attempting to deliver. And, you know, we'll get there eventually. I know I'm probably not the first or the last modder to come on one of these shows and say that, but, you know, it is. I believe it, and that's what matters. And I think we have a good enough plan in place to make that reality happen. Um, as regards to the how, you know, the sausage is made, you mentioned that the plot, you know, the story is pretty, you know, kind of settled out except for the details. Well, I suppose my answer to that would be the devil is very much in the details in this case. The design documents of Van Buren, I'm sure many people who will be listening to this would have read them or heard of them or seen a YouTube video about them, or at least are vaguely aware. If they aren't, just as a quick aside, I believe it was 2008, roughly around that time, the entirety of the design documents for the game were leaked online. and have been used ever since to help with mod projects. Obviously, the New Vegas devs took great inspiration from them, and they've existed in some form or another. Apologies. I believe that the existence of them has led to this kind of common misconception amongst the community in that Van Buren is almost done or basically finished, which just unfortunately isn't the case at all. There are aspects of those design documents that are very, very well fleshed out, but they are in the minority by a significant margin. Um, in the largest of cases, there are great overviews in the documents of what areas are being described, characters, quests, stuff of that nature. But as we mentioned earlier, the detail is very, very lacking, and that's where most of the actual work is. It's in the detail. We basically have a twofold job, as far as I'm concerned. We have to fill in the gaps that have been left by the design docs in a way that is faithful to both the original games and, hopefully the intended director's intent of Van Buren. We kind of have this internal rule at the team that is kind of our Bible. We joke about it that the dev docs are kind of, we always go back to the dev docs wherever possible if we have an idea. The other challenge, and they're kind of linked together, is translating what was fundamentally meant to be a 2D game into a 3D medium. And by nature of that transition, there's going to be stuff lost and there's going to be stuff changed, and some stuff that it's added in a positive way. But yeah, no, they're the kind of two main challenges that we're really kind of trying to overcome.
You talked about bringing, because obviously there's specific elements of the older games that were designed for the gaming audience of the late 80s and early 90s. And those sorts of gameplay elements aren't really as functional, as popular, as easy to understand and solve compared to, or for modding audiences. It's two completely different mindsets on how to approach gaming. For anybody, for longtime listeners, you'll remember a couple months back we had Cullen Wino, who was the lead dev on a Fallout modding project called Vault 13, which was attempting to recreate, and I'm going to get this wrong, and I know I'm going to get this wrong. It was attempting to recreate Fallout 2. Yes.
Fallout 1.
Fallout 1.
Fallout 1.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Fallout 4
See, I knew it. I knew I was going to get it wrong. It was attempting to recreate Fallout 1, and one of the things that that we talked about in that interview was that there was a specific segment in the game, if I'm remembering correctly, where you had to like swing across a canyon or something, but you had to like find a rope first and then like, throw it into like a segment of the roof to like hook it there, and then you swing across. Recreating that in Fallout 4 or Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3's engine is not impossible, but it's a much larger, undertaking in making something like that work. So one of the things that they did is they thought about alternative ways to basically do the same thing, but go about it in a way that's more, again, modern audience friendly. For some people that might sound like I just said some sort of offensive word, but it is a common fact that the way that people played back then is much different from the way people play now, whether that be, a bad thing because of retention issue or a good thing because now we understand more about how, gamers interact with like puzzles and game design evolves and stuff like that. But for your team, because, you guys are also experiencing the same obstacles or opportunities in a sense, what sort of what has been like your strategy and your methodology when it comes to these older game design choices and how to reflect a similar answer to the problems they represent for a newer audience?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's something that we have agonized over for years now at this point. We've kind of taken the same approach that actually the Vault. I'm glad you mentioned Vault 13 because I actually think it is such a genuine shame that that project came to an end because I really think they had something there and I really think they understood the spirit of the classics.
Mhm.
And I'm going to use this word spirit again because what you alluded to earlier, like to use the rope example in Vault 15, um, where you gather a rope, use the rope to scale down. You are correct. That potentially could be something difficult to implement in a 3D engine. There are ways to do it. There's animations you can do. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to beg Hitman and Zalandro to please respond to my messages because they are incredibly talented animators that would make our lives a million times easier. So I've hijacked your podcast. Sorry, Toshi, to make a plea for
One of
help.
these, I'm still like, I have a short list of who I want to bring onto the podcast. Zalandro is definitely one of them. I'm gonna
Yes, you
have
should
to
interview
write
him.
down a
He's
note
very
so that he
intelligent.
can, instead of responding to you via messages, respond to you via my podcast. And then the only
Yes,
way you guys are going to
absolutely.
talk for like the next 4 years is just coming onto the show.
That's fine. I can deal with that as long as we get his talents. I'm completely fine with that.
Right.
But in the other senses, I think going to answer your question. The way to translate the choice architecture of the first couple of games into a 3D space, I think, is basically taking the same philosophy that New Vegas devs did. What it boils down to really in Fallout 1 and 2, and in my opinion anyway, and that this is just my opinion, is you're given multiple different ways, some of which aren't immediately obvious to you to complete a quest, right? So just by way of example, in Burham Springs, one of the quests involves repairing a water plant to get clean water flowing into the town again. We provide, what to say, 6 different ways to complete that quest, only 3 of which are marked and obvious. Um, I do agree with you that there are certain modern conveniences that people would probably prefer. A good example of that would be quest markers. That was a debate we had for quite a while. Should we have quest markers? Should we? We eventually did settle on having quest markers, which may upset some people. I understand from the classic community they may prefer kind of free form exploration. But I guess our philosophy was we kind of want this to be as accessible to a new player as possible. And what we really, really want people to interact with, it's less the jank and like gunk of Fallout 1 and 2 and tactics to a lesser extent, but more the spirit and the ideas those games were trying to communicate. The freeform dialogue, the exploration, something I'm very attracted to, for example, is picking up a random thing in the map and then finding it has a use, an hour and a half later. I can give you an example of that if you wish. We will be utilizing a Fallout 1, Fallout 2 style world travel map to navigate our game world. It won't be a contiguous 3D space like New Vegas or Fallout 3. It'll be what we term world spaces. There'll be 19 of them broken up by this world travel map.
Mm.
In addition to that, in addition obviously to the random encounters that would have been present in the classic games, we will have what are called story worlds, which if people are familiar with the first Fallout game would probably be equivalent to the Great Khan camp outside Shady Sands. Basically, a smaller version of a world space that will usually host one kind of bespoke or unique quest in it, as opposed to the world space which could have dozens of quests within them. If that makes sense, and I'm happy to answer more clarifying questions on that later if you wish.
So
But just
to put
oh,
this
I'm sorry. Yes.
sort of like a modern context, it would be closer to something like like I feel like I feel I feel like this is both an esoteric reference, but also one that the Fallout community is going to immediately recognize. It's sort of like Wasteland 3, where you
Yes.
have hub locations and then an
Yes.
overworld map.
Exactly correct.
The
But
question though is, how large are these individual locations? Because you said there's 19 of them, so that means they can't be like, they can't be like Dead Money sized, right? Or like Big Mountain sized. They have to be like reasonably, maybe not reasonably, but like relatively small. So maybe like closer to like half the size, or maybe like even a quarter of the size of like, a world space like Far Harbor, for example, or like one of the parks in Nuka World, one of the themed zones. So because there's 19 of them, how big are these areas exactly?
So an advantage of the world travel system, they can be as big or small as they need to be. Um, we have a fully functioning, um, interactive, animated world travel system. It's not. If I don't know, you're familiar with Salt Lake Stories. It's not akin to that where you're kind of traveling across a map. It is a, for lack of a better term, it's a anthropomorphized version of the Pip Boy that the player character walks across and selects the locations they want to visit, exactly like Fallout 1 or 2 or Wasteland 3.
Okay.
The hub worlds within that can be as large or as small as they want to be because they're not contiguous with each other. It doesn't actually matter how big they are. Everything can fit on the map at the same time. So, for example, Denver, and maybe I should take a step back here and kind of explain a bit more about the actual, location that I'm talking about here.
Mhm, mhm.
So Fallout 1 took place in Southern California. Fallout 2 took place in Northern California and a tiny bit of Oregon, I believe, and maybe even a tiny bit of Nevada, technically. Oh yeah, New Reno's in Nevada, of course. Our game, well, our game slash Van Buren, they're one and the same, really, in terms of the locations we're trying to develop.
Mhm.
Takes place in the the 4 states Commonwealth to be exact, which is Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona.
Mm.
And that is where the game map will take place. So it is a 121 grid square map, as we said, with 19 world spaces on it. So each a world space will correspond to one grid on that map. Now, the more math savvy viewers amongst you might now be thinking, oh well, that leaves 108 grid squares or 102 grid squares to fill in, and we do have other ways of filling them in. We have random encounters, as I stated, which would be similar to Fallout 1 and 2. You pop into a little grid square and there's a rad scorpion there,
Mhm.
stuff of that nature. And in addition, we will have, as I said, the story worlds, which will be smaller, uh, bespoke world spaces that will have one quest tied to them. And that would probably be more similar to what you're referring to, Toshi, where something like they may be the size of one of the parks in Nuka World, just by way of example. That's actually probably a good size comparison. Whereas the world spaces could be as small as Freeside to as big as DC. So like Denver, we're planning on being roughly the same size as DC in Fallout 3. That's
Yeah,
the that's
because
the
like
size we're going for.
especially with the way you sort of like described it with like random encounters and stuff, that sort of made me think of like, again, to tie it back to Wasteland 3. You'll have like random encounters in that game, but it's not like in like a lot of early Final Fantasy games when you like run into like an encounter, and obviously with those games it's usually like a fight, and then you're just like immediately in like combat mode. You enter into this like world space where there's a combat situation, and you have to like figure out how to, because I mean Wasteland's slightly different because it's a top down tactical turn-based sort of thing, so like it's slightly different, but the concept of a random encounter happens and then you're entered into a world space where combat takes place is
Yes,
different than just being like plopped into like a Pokemon battle or anything like
that
that.
is correct. Well,
Yeah.
look, it's a first-person 3D game. You could always run away.
Yeah, and like,
You
and
know,
obviously like those areas are going to be like much smaller areas, because like you're not getting into like a sniper battle or anything. You don't need these like massive or maybe you will.
maybe you will. Yes,
No.
exactly. Yeah.
But you would obviously like, just to your point, like if each area is supposed to have like a main mission, obviously like depending on like the size and scope of the mission and the like relevancy and importance to like the story, it's going to be different sizes. Like even though it's a prison, I would imagine that Tibbet's prison is going to be larger than you know God, I wish I knew any other location besides Tibbet's prison.
Tibbetts Prison, to give you to save you, Tibbetts Prison would be larger than, let's say, Black Canyon Prison, which is an NCR controlled prison in the western part of the map. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, there will be a variability, and I'm happy to go into the specifics of what each world space is and what they kind of contain. Um, as regards the story worlds, those kind of smaller, more bespoke ones, it, as a overall kind of general rule, I guess, and kind of a guiding for the discussion, they will mostly be concerned with side quests. They will rarely have an impact on the main story. The reasoning for that is we don't want, since the story worlds are primarily an addition that we have come up with, they weren't fleshed out within the original Van Buren documents. We don't want them to affect Van Buren's story, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
in the same way. Now, some of them, to be clear, are extrapolations that we've taken from the documents and kind of fleshed out into their own things. Some of them are from the previous games. For example, we are going to feature the site of Vault Zero from Fallout Tactics, which we've termed the Crater. So that'll be, if there are, for the 5 Tactics fans listening to this, I'm sure they'll be excited by that inclusion.
Right.
And yeah, look, yeah, stuff of that nature. But yeah, to kind of answer your question as clean a way as possible, there will be variability between the size of the world spaces. If people have played Burham Springs, which is one of the world spaces, one of the 19, that would probably be equivalent, probably roughly equivalent to Zion, maybe slightly smaller than Zion.
Hmm.
Just kind of give it a vague idea of the size of one of the world spaces.
So to sort of shift focus a little bit from the world spaces, which for as much as I genuinely, like, unironically enjoyed the game, sort of in equal measures, I also hate bringing it up because, one, I feel like I either intentionally or unintentionally bring it up more than is probably necessary. But Starfield, funnily enough, sort of feels like it has a similar system to the system that you're talking about, because unlike, Fallout or Elder Scrolls or anything like that, it's not taking place in a single continuous world map. Depending on the location that you're in, it might feel like it, but you can go to various different locations. If it had given us the option of, like, actually being able to fly around the solar system, and then, like, like bump into a planet or run into, like, a random encounter and it's like a space battle, or helping somebody who's like adrift in space or something like that, then it would, funnily enough, be a lot closer to what you're talking about with your design approach here, having it closer to like Fallout 1 and 2. And there with that specifically, that sort of like design compared to like full open world spaces like New Vegas, 476, stuff like that. Which I guess this is sort of a two-part question. Part one, is that for you personally a more interesting design approach when it comes to world explanation? And then when it comes to specifically, the work that you're doing here, was that an approach that you felt could still resonate with modern audiences and was more um more, what's the word, something that would gel with more modern audiences
Sure.
and was more faithful to the original games? Or was it a matter of like, we need to do it this way because it's basically how the game would have played out anyway? To reiterate all my rambling there, this sort of overworld sort of setting, is that something that you on an individual level find to be more enjoyable than a full open world style? And then on a professional level, when it comes to the New West, is it something that you guys are creating specifically because that's how the older game was, or because you see a way to modernize it so that it works for a modern audience?
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer personally first. I'm a great lover of the 3D games. I've played them all. I love wandering around. It's great. It's fun. The immediate and kind of unavoidable problem when it would have came to making this area a 3D um, game, is it's simply just too big. 4 states is way too large to accurately represent in a condensed 3D world space. I remember reading a long time ago. I can't remember the exact. I might get the proportions slightly wrong, but I believe Bethesda operated on a 1:500 scale, basically meaning that 500 meters was equivalent to 1 meter when they were creating their world spaces. And I applied that logic to a very early trial version of our map, and I came into a situation where you could walk from Phoenix to Albuquerque in 3.5 minutes,
Mm.
which to me feels slightly silly, and I think it stretches suspension disbelief a little bit too far. So that was the immediate reason that a 3D world space wasn't viable. Um, Second option was the answer that the Vault 13 devs, as you mentioned earlier, actually came up with, which was to divide the map into thirds. That was maybe they went to fifths in the end, actually, before they cancelled, but their original plan was to have 5 world spaces that you could travel between, and those world spaces themselves would be condensed versions of the game map. We also considered that. Eventually, we kind of settled on, and you kind of alluded to it yourself there a minute ago. We thought that a faithfulness to the originals would be nice, and we also think it provides a lot of opportunities that other Fallout mods haven't been able to do so far. In that we can somewhat faithfully recreate the areas we're actually trying to represent without much condensing, which I think is a great opportunity. I will say, all that being said, I don't think I was fully convinced by it until I saw Alex, my colleague, Caveman's actual work on the world travel system. To quote Todd, and I don't know why I'm quoting Todd. I don't know. It just came into my mind. It just works.
It just works.
It just works. No, but genuinely, it just works.
Yeah.
You leave Burham through the gate. You're popped into this like anthropomorphized Pip-Boy map. There's a little version of your character on the floor. You click on the grid square you want to walk to. The dude walks to the square, and you pop into the world space. It just works. It just smoothly functions. I don't know how else to say it other than that.
I mean, like
And
it's a
that was the
system.
moment I was convinced.
It's a system that that game designers have been using practically forever. Like I think somewhere in my ramblings I mentioned Final Fantasy. I have incredibly vivid memories of playing Final Fantasy 7. No, sorry, not 7, 10. No, 9. 9 was my first game. The Forgotten Child. No, that'd probably be 8. Nobody remembers 8. But 9 was my first game, and I have very strong memories of like running around in sort of that like overworld space, and then like, you know, running into like a boss monster and stuff like that. And like even before that, you have like there's just like so many like Pokemon, Fallout, you know, Final Fantasy, fucking Wasteland. Like it's a style of game design that is so good at bringing the scope of just like distance into into like a digestible portion for the gaming audience, because you know not every game can be
sorry to cut across you.
Yeah,
That is something that's very important to us as well. Kind of communicating the actual size of the areas we're talking about is very, very important.
yeah,
to
especially
us.
since you're covering the 4 states. Like it's a huge amount of space.
Yes, it's gigantic. It's I think larger than the first game, roughly equivalent in size to the second game in terms of sheer geographic area, and also the factions that we have within the space. You know, they need space. The NCR needs space. The Brotherhood needs space. The Legion needs space. You know, there are. It just wouldn't have worked, unfortunately, in a contiguous 3D world. And I think people will understand that, and I think our ways of getting around it, like for example, we don't just have the overworld map as a means of getting from world space to world space. We will also have a point crawl system that would be diegetic within the world using the caravan companies that the various factions use. So there'll be multiple ways in which the player can kind of interact with travel within the game, which I think is important, particularly, and you know we'll probably get into it later, but when it comes to the main story, there are several contagions, for lack of a better word, that are spreading across the world. And, you know, that spread is something we want to kind of, you know, haunt the player a little bit, kind of make them feel like they're a bit under threat. You know, they can't easily run away from it. So yeah, that's just that's kind of our thinking behind utilizing the overworld map and world space and a world space system.
Well, I'm sorry, Jack, but that's something I'm going to have to vehemently disagree with you with, because I mean, if Rockstar can make a map as big as Grand Theft Auto 5 and as big as Red Dead Redemption, you, a team of like maybe like 12 people, you guys can totally make something that big. Like, come on.
Correct. Yes, you're right. Of course. I'm sorry. Yes, of course you're right. Yeah. Sorry, I
Stop
forgot.
being lazy. But like, yeah, and because I mean, there's just like there's like studios that can get away with that. They're like Rockstar, like that's literally their bread and butter since like GTA 4. That's been exactly what they've made. Even like I'd probably go back and go as far to say as like like GTA 3 and GTA 2,
Yeah.
where like the map size is like part of the appeal. And like Rockstar has the money to do that. The Microsoft flight simulator things, where it's basically like, yeah, this is effectively like a 1-to-1 of the entire planet. It's like, they can do that. But for a lot of studios that are either on a smaller budget or sometimes it's just like a design choice, right? Sometimes it's just a
Probably.
design choice to create, because like Wasteland 3 took place in like Colorado, but it was like just Colorado, and it wasn't like it was like a massive space. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, like two specific cities, maybe two specific cities, and I think like a smaller it's been a while since I played it, but like it's not a massive amount of space, but they still did that, one, probably to incorporate the Kodiak, the like tanked out Jeep that you drive around, um and also just to like help emphasize that feeling of like travel and space and distance, to make the game not only feel bigger, but to also instill a specific kind of feeling in the player. So especially when it comes to something like Van Buren, I think that you guys are definitely going about it in the right direction to not only be faithful to the original source material, but also to help, as we, talked about, uh, you know, really like grind down, like really shape out the feeling of distance and space, which I think that the first two games did
Yes.
phenomenally well.
It probably is also worth mentioning, and I'm not technically skilled. All I know how doing the Gek is input dialogue and put in terminals. I don't know anything about anything with the Gek. I I'm not. I don't have a very strong belief that if you were to make a map, a contiguous map that is like, let's say, 10 times the size of New Vegas, I'm pretty sure the game would break. I don't think it's even possible to accurately represent something the size of even like GTA, as you mentioned. I'm not sure the engine could handle that amount in it. I might be completely wrong in saying that, but I feel like I've heard that before off a few people. So I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure it's possible. Put it that way to you. I'm not even sure that it's feasible. You know.
That explains why Starfield, like a lot of the planets you go to, just had like maybe like 4 or 5, 4 or 5
Yeah.
like pre-cut out bases, and everything else would just rock. It's not because they were lazy, guys. It's just because the engine that they've been using for the last 30 years doesn't work anymore. But to move topics again, we've talked about how the original name of the mod was Revolution Blues. Sorry, Revelation Blues.
Yes.
And then it got changed to New West. Um, walk us through that. Why Revelation Blues? Why the New West? Especially since you're West-er, but speaking as somebody who literally lives on the actual biblical West Coast of the United States, you're not West. But what was the approach with these names, especially since the story's pretty much Van Buren, pretty much
Sure.
exactly
Uh,
Van Buren. What was the thought process with these names?
so Revelation Blues is it's a bit murky. It was a name picked long, long, long before I joined the project. I believe it was picked nearly 5 years ago now at this point. Um, to be honest, I never got a truly satisfactory answer as to why the project was called Revelation Blues. So I probably won't be able to give you a particularly satisfactory answer right now, but I'll do my best. My understanding was Revelation Blues was supposed to evoke um, something related to the new plague, which is one of our main MacGuffins as regards to the plot. It's been recycled in other games. I think Point Lookout used it a bit. Um, but yes, sorry, I digress. One of the alternate names for the new plague was the blue flu, which was seemed like kind of a colloquial name that people used, which is where kind of the blues part came from, is my understanding. Now, one of
Smart. I
my
like that. That's
one
creative.
of my it is creative. The problem is it took me 30 seconds to explain that to you.
That's fair.
Um, and we kind of briefly talked earlier. It doesn't. It's not a particularly evocative name, and for a lot of people that we asked, we kind of put up polls. We asked people in the community, people out of the community. The general sentiment was confusion around what it meant. People just didn't really understand what we were going for when we asked what kind of Fallout game we thought. And maybe I should ask you actually now, dear. I'll put you on the spot. If you were to hear in isolation Revelation Blues, what kind of Fallout game do you think is kind of coming out of that kind of name? I guess.
Well, my immediate thought with like blues goes to the oh gosh, what is it?
Old World Blues.
Yeah, that's it. The concept of old world blues, which has been something that the Fallout community has been talking about for a while, where it's basically like the nostalgia for like the halcyon days of like this, that, or the other thing, of a world that either no longer is or never practically was. Like I would imagine a lot of residents of the wasteland think that like America was like everybody had fast cars and suits and ties, and because that's what they see on like billboards and posters and stuff like that. So when I think of Revolution Blues, I think like kind of that, and then along the same sort of lines as like the wordplay with the word blues, I would think like Revelation Blues, that probably has something to do with like enlightenment around the concept of old world blues, or like some sort of like juxtaposition, or some kind of story that like turns that on its head. Especially when it comes to the titles of things, there are some things that were, well, specifically there's some titles that just like make absolutely no sense, but then you like get through the story, or get through like part of the story, and then you realize like, oh, that's what it means. One of the ones that, and this is like more so like a recent thing, because as of the time of recording, we're like just like a couple days from the release of the last episode of the first season of Welcome to Derry. So there's a lot of conversation going around like Pennywise and Stephen King and the original book and stuff. And as somebody who has read the original book, it's really interesting seeing a lot of people's reactions to some of the events that happen in the story, and theorizing around, this, that, and the other thing. And it's interesting because some people get like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's right there. Like you get it, but you don't really get it. But with it, the thing is that the thing you see actually one of the ways that I have understood the story is that it is very much pointing, or sorry, the strongest theme of the story is how violence is oftentimes sort of like ignored, or like swept under the rug, mostly, or prominently, with violence as it relates to children. It's just kind of like swept away, forgotten, and just kind of like brushed aside by society. And so the title "It," because the entity in the story is referred to as Pennywise, not it, but the it can, in specific interpretations, be referring to like just that. the anger that we show to each other, the violence that we show to each other, that again we just often brush aside and don't think about, again, especially when it comes to children and stuff. So not to go into a full dissertation on the meaning of Stephen King's It and its deeper themes and stuff. That's usually where my head goes, and that's probably where my mind would have gone with something like Revelation Blues. Like, it has to mean something deeper than the actual story, because if I know that it's that it's just Van Buren, then it's like, all right, there has to be some sort of story element that in some way makes the title Revelation Blues make sense. And especially since the story of Van Buren partially includes the blue flu, and just sickness and plague and medical stuff like that. That's like really creative. That's what blues means in this exact interpretation.
Sure, that's John. That's a great answer, genuinely. I think the fundamental issue with everything you said there is we weren't building the game in a direction that would have, I think, satisfied those conclusions you were drawing, right? And I think that was the fundamental problem. It wasn't, and not that the game won't have depth or anything like that. I don't mean that. What I mean is, for a name like that to truly land, I think you really need to hit it at certain points, and we weren't really going in that way. The reason the New West, while I do admit, is probably a potentially a less interesting title on the face of it, fits so much better is it very much follows the much more traditional, and like I would personally say, I think in some cases, a tradition isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think, there is definitely elements of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Something like the New West directly relates to the location that we're talking about. The game takes place in the Old West. It's in Arizona, it's in New Mexico, it's in Utah, it's the Old West, right?
Mm-hmm.
The player is a man who has escaped out of prison, or a woman, escaped out of prison into the great big world, and is trying to find their place in it. It's an old school cowboy story in a lot of ways. It's a gunslinger, whatever you want it, whatever you want to be. There are characters in the game that directly reference the Odyssey. A lot of Odysseus's journey, in the original book, is about moving from place to place, following this endless journey. Endless journeys are, they're a symptom, and I guess a part of the American, that story about the Wild West. And I think that's something that we really tried to capture with a name like the New West, to really kind of, and there's also, to be clear as well, there's other elements as well. It's a frontier area. The NCR are expanding dramatically into the area. In some cases, to great success. In other cases, huge failures, much like the US government was. There are frontier groups, religious groups like the Mormons, similar to the Old West, they're back again. Native tribal groups that are, having their land encroached on them, who are struggling under the weight of imperialist oppression. There's so much about the New West that kind of links back in and hooks back into the story that I think it really, really fits. It also helps that it's quite snappy, I guess. And it kind of rolls off the tongue. I mean, and I mean nothing by this. You mispronounced Revelation Blues, I think 3 or 4 times, which just kind of speaks to the fact that it's a bit of a clunky title. You know what I mean? Whereas you haven't gotten the New West wrong once.
Yeah.
I think that if you catch what I mean, I think that's kind of sums it up. So that's kind of the main reasoning behind this. And yeah, I suppose as well, just as kind of a peek behind the curtain, how the sausage is made. In terms of it wasn't the only name we considered the New West. We had several others, but the New West was the one that consistently kind of seemed to tingle that little bit in people's brain. They were like, "Oh, that kind of." I think someone said to me at one point, "That sounds like a Fallout title," and I kind of ran with that, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of the thought process behind both.
Well, seeing as how it's literally just Van Buren, why didn't you guys call it like Van Buren or something akin to that?
We can't. We get sued. That's a great question. And actually, do you know what? it's been so long ago that I thought about that. I actually nearly forgot what the answer was, but legally we can, and that's why all the other ongoing attempts at making it was, I guess specifically now follow yesterday, since the other one, I'm forgetting his name. Sorry, the guy on Twitter. What's his name again? Apologies.
What guy on Twitter? Oh, Adam Lackow.
Yeah, it seems that, as you said, his attempt is halted. The reason Fallout yesterday is called Fallout yesterday is because they can't call it Van Buren. It's as simple as that.
That's fair.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Just make up a reason. Just say that Josh Sawyer would come for your legs.
Well, look, in an ideal world, if we ever do get towards, release, I would genuinely really, really love to reach out to all those guys, all those original devs, and kind of, how I know have you played Fallout London, but similarly to how in Fallout London they got the Doctor Who actors in, do like a little homage. I think it'd be lovely to get, Avalon and Sawyer and all the rest.
Yeah.
Two of them have actually died, unfortunately, since to, kind of maybe a bit of a cameo or a voice line here or there, something just to honor them, for the work. I think it'd be nice.
Yeah, definitely. So it seems that there are like through and it feels mostly like something that's sort of existed since, I guess, probably started mostly with like Fallout New Vegas, because there was like a lot of stuff that Obsidian sort of had to like leave on the cutting room floor. Like as far as like the scope of the world, like I think and like, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think that there was originally supposed to be a segment where we could actually go like deeper into Legion territory and sort of see like a little bit of like how they operate like past the front lines.
Yes, correct. And okay. I think the mod Nova Arizona, who you should definitely get on as well if you haven't already. I'm not sure. They'd be probably great people to talk to as well, because I think they're recreating that area of cooked content in Arizona. So that'd be I'm personally, on a personal level, I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. I'll have to remember to reach out to them. But there's like it to my knowledge anyway, it's like New Vegas and Fallout 4. New Vegas, obviously, like big parts that they just couldn't get into the game because of, budget or time. They were only given 18 months. This, that, or the other reason. But there's sort of like this there's like a growing list of things that they wanted to implement into the game, but for one reason or the other couldn't, or perhaps didn't fully capitalize on. So in my mind, there's obviously, like we just talked about the Legion location in Fallout New Vegas, the 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, yes, with the underwater vault and the psychic squid and stuff in Fallout 4. But then there's also like the fucking the whole, like, after you get out of the memory den in Fallout 4, and you figure out, like, how Kellogg is getting in and out of the Institute, and then you go up to talk to Nick, and then Kellogg responds, and then you're like, what? And Nick's like, what? And like, that's just the end of that. And it's like, that feels like that had so much fucking potential. And it's really cool that the mod team of oh fuck, what's the name of the mod here? I have it in here somewhere. Hold on, give me a sec. Fucking, where is it? It's in here something. It's memory something.
Is it Mind Games?
That's it. Mind Games. The team behind Mind Games, who's like, so there's nothing really to create, because there wasn't, as far as I know anyway, there wasn't really anything there to begin with, but they're sort of like, like, oh, this was like a really cool moment in the game. Let's, make something out of that.
Let's flesh it out. Yeah, let's expand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, it seems like there's specific things within the Fallout games that just get left on the cutting room floor that so powerfully attract the attention of the modding community. To my knowledge and to my frustration, that does not include 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, because what the fuck do you mean we could fight a psychic squid? But we did see sort of like a glimpse of that in Fallout London with one specific quest line that had a similar sort of approach. Not exactly the same thing for obvious reasons, but similar. But again, the point is there are these moments that sort of become like almost like objects of affection, like lost treasure or lost stories that need to be like archived and like remembered and carried forward through history. Almost in like a tier list of unfinished products or of unfinished stories. What is it about these stories that perhaps it's something more so unique to Bethesda games because of how encouraging Bethesda is to the modding community? But when it comes to these unfinished stories, what is the obsession and the fascination with these stories? These lost tales of grand adventure.
It's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? I think, in a lot of ways, probably Van Buren is like the ultimate lost story. It's the one that was never made. There's nothing there, for people to grasp onto. It. I guess what attracts people it's the possibility. It's the maybe for some it's the oh, I can do this better. I can write this better. I can figure this out better. For others, like, oh, and for me personally, it's kind of a desire to, geez, wouldn't it be great to see this in a game? Like I've always that's kind of how I got into modding in the first place, like years and years and years ago, modding like Rome Total War. I was like, wouldn't it be cool? So I'm a massive history nerd, I should mention. So like me looking at Roman infantry units and being like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they had like this armor?
He's European. He's interested in history. The first things he brings up is the Roman Empire.
yeah. He is a fascist. No, he's not. No, far from it. But no. Well, like, yeah. I guess I think to try answer succinctly, I think it's just the desire to see things that never happened translated in high quality, and I think the crux of this in a lot of cases relates to the quality and something that we think about a lot. Obviously, one of our main challenges in terms of making the New West is, rightly, Obsidian borrowed many ideas from Van Buren to make New Vegas. Big, Big Mountain, the Legion, uh, there's so many Rangers. There's dozens upon dozens and dozens of examples. So one of our main challenges, considering that our game, and it's probably something I should have mentioned earlier and made clear, our game isn't taking place in the so-called canon timeline of the series. So our game is a direct sequel, Fallout 2 and Fallout Tactics. It takes place in 2253, and depending on the endings of our game, a version of the events of Vegas may happen, but not in the exact same way. You're the prisoner, which is our main character, will never go on to become the courier. 20 years later in Vegas. Because of that, we kind of have a somewhat unique challenge in terms of adapting characters that were in the Van Buren dev docs that appeared in New Vegas back into our version of the game and ensuring that they are visually distinct enough and I suppose artistically distinct enough from their New Vegas versions, but also familiar enough that a New Vegas player can go, oh yeah, that's the Legion. Does that make sense as to what I'm getting at there? It's a major challenge that we've really enjoyed um, dealing with. Like to give a really really simple example, the NCR in New Vegas, their uniform color is like tan. It's like sandy colored. Our NCR, they wear dark brown, like dark brown, like a bear, the whole way through. That's very very simple. Now that's not the only differentiating factor between our NCR and the Vegas NCR, but just to give a very basic example of one of the kind of decisions that goes into play in these kind of things. That's an example. Our Legion is quite different, I would say. There's no football pads. I'm sure some people will be delighted with that. They have a much more sophisticated arsenal, I would say, than they do in Vegas. They're not entirely reliant on armoring themselves in stolen football gear from the University of Arizona. They have a bit more going to them than that. But even beyond that, we have characters like, we have Joshua Graham in the game. He's a companion in Van Buren. We have Arcade Gannon as a companion. So there are several challenging factors. And I know, sorry, I kind of veered off your question there a bit, but I just thought that was kind of important to get across. As
It
a
is
point.
that is helpful information. Oh, you still there?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I was just, you're good to go. Hello.
Yep.
Sorry, I thought I cut out there. No, that's to kind of answer your question. That's kind of, I guess, a bit of a convoluted, long-winded answer to your question, but that's basically the idea behind it. It's a desire to show things that haven't been seen before. That's I think that's the main thrust behind what we're doing.
Gotcha.
And I suppose,
Gotcha.
and I think any modder like who was attempting to do a similar thing to us, I think they all share that kind of trait, which I think is a lovely thing. By the way, I think it's a great reflection of the longevity of Fallout as a game, and I guess Bethesda projects as a whole, that people care enough to actually be like, well, as you said, wouldn't it be great to see a psychic squid?
Right.
But,
So to clarify that bit a little bit, it's the world that your game takes place in is basically the events of Van Buren, but they're not exactly the exact same things that happened in Van Buren. Yeah, it's the same, like, major like story beats and stuff, but it's sort of like, slightly alternate universe where, like,
No, it's the exact same. It is the exact same thing that happened in Van Buren. The issue with it fitting into the canon timeline is, for example, in Van Buren, in the original Dev Docs of Van Buren, the Legion attacked Hoover Dam in the 2230s. In New Vegas, they attacked in 2277. So there are several things. There are several pieces of Van Buren that Obsidian folded into New Vegas that make them incompatible with each other, if that
I
makes
see.
sense.
Okay, so yeah, so
So
you're
we
more
are
so recreating the game as it originally was, but because of the changes that were made for like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, makes it basically like incompatible with the timeline, but it's still like
correct.
timeline shaped.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Pretend it's 2003. That's what I keep saying to the new writers. Just pretend it's 2003. That's
Yeah.
the best, the easiest way to think about it is pretend the Iraq War just started. New metal is huge, and George Bush is president. That's the just pretend that's the reality you're living in. It's the best way I can explain it.
Fuck, I hate that I hate that I live in a timeline where I long for the halcyon days of Bush being president.
I know it's pretty
Bitch.
bad, isn't it? Yeah.
So, and this is another one of those things that I bring up, not as much as I bring up Starfield, both prompted and unprompted, but definitely something that I bring up a lot with Fallout modders, or Fallout New Vegas modders specifically, especially when I bring them onto the podcast. But and I know we're a couple years divorced from it at this point, but the Frontier was a big deal.
I knew the Frontier was coming. Yeah, fair enough. Poor TG Spy, man. He must be sick of us talking about it.
Like, I hate talking about it. I hate having to talk about it.
It casts a very long shadow.
It does. And
yeah,
again, for longtime listeners, you know that I've brought on multiple different New Vegas devs, and I've talked with them all about it. And I've brought on TG Spy, and I talked with him about it. Would like fantastic conversation. If for everybody,
it was very illuminating.
Yeah,
that was one of the episodes I listened to.
It was a great conversation. There's obviously a lot of things that were sort of like, touchy subjects. I don't feel as if it was anything that, either of us had like a problem navigating or anything, but it was one of those things that like, fuck, I hate to keep bringing this shit up, man. Especially since, if I remember correctly, when we were doing that interview, He said that when he originally got on the team, he was like 17. So it's like
Yeah, crazy.
that all the stuff that he had to go through at that young, like, fuck, that sucks.
Yeah.
But again, still, like, yes, the Frontier casts a very long shadow. And I have to say, for all transparency, I am technically on the mod team, but
Okay.
I do like fucking
Well,
Jackal.
I will say this. Um, Also, for all transparency, I like the Frontier. I should just put that out there. I think
I
it has problems, particularly from a narrative point of view. I think it has problems because, and also I'm a writer, so that's what I think about. I'm a nerd that way, but I enjoyed my time with it. I've actually played through it twice, which is more than I can say for most New Vegas mods. So yeah, that's my cards on the table. I'm not a hater. I'm not gonna shit on it. Yeah, just to put that out there. That's just something I'd like to say
Yeah,
personally.
and like, again, I'm technically a staff member. I don't really do anything. I've edited like 2 videos for them, like the trailers. Um
Fair.
and I've submitted some voice line work for them. But I'm not really like super involved with the story or like the modding or anything. I
Sure.
know bits and pieces about the story because I've talked with TG Spy a whole bunch, and I've done editing for the trailers and stuff. So it's like I know a little bit, but I don't know
Sure.
like a lot of it. But it's like, the to they got the new Frontier that they're working on, which is going to be like the 7th mod project that includes the word new. So fucking come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah, that's
originality.
true.
but they have like the new version of it coming out and stuff, and it seems like it's going to be a lot better, and I wish them well and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
the original story, when the original mod came out, initially was like, oh yeah, let's go, like here, like let's go baby, and then people played it and like, what the fuck is happening? um Following that, and again, this is something that I've talked with a lot of mod authors about, not just New Vegas, but like Fallout 4 and uh like a lot of modders. Everybody sort of like paused and then like went back to like reevaluate stuff. It was a real like, we gotta button down the hatches and tighten everything up for the entirety of the modding community.
Sure.
Um in a lot of ways that was super helpful, but also like a much bigger burden on just like everybody. Because now there was a lot more scrutiny out there. There was a lot more eyes, a lot more people were like really paying attention, for better and worse reasons. That's all I'm going to say about that. But it was a major thing. With the Frontier as a retrospective, how has your approach, and it's a little bit easier with this because you're not writing like an original thing, you're just
Yes.
developing like a game that effectively already exists. It didn't, but it basically existed. So
No,
there's a
just
little
to
bit
say,
less.
there is a lot of original writing happening as well. Just to be clear, like
Oh
there
no,
are
yeah. But there's like not
significant
as
tracks.
much there's not as much like wiggle room for
Yes.
creativity.
Well, as I always say, we have fantastic guardrails on anything we're writing
Right.
because we can never go too crazy because we have the Van Buren dev docs as our guiding star, and that has been a constant help in terms of our writing process
Yeah.
and our narrative kind of construction process. We have, and even beyond that, we are also writing very much in the context of this was supposed to be a sequel to Fallout 1 and 2. We know what the tone and characterization of Fallout 1 and 2 are, even though they are slightly different from each other. We have like a general vague idea of what we want. So we have great guidance. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term.
Yeah. Your
We have
project has like an iron skeleton already
yes,
laid out. You just have to fill in the bits
exactly,
and
yeah,
pieces. But even
precisely,
even
yes.
then, you guys are like making original stuff for it. So how has the long shadow that the Frontier has cast, how has that changed not only the way that you approach the project, but how you develop for the project?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Like, look, I think as someone who enjoyed the Frontier, I think, undeniably, you have to sit at the feet, regardless of what I may personally feel. And I think there was some, slightly unfair things that were leveled against the Frontier. Some of which were very fair. I'm not going to get into it, but you know, overall, the community reaction was bad.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that. And at the end of the day, no matter how me sitting on an ivory tower may feel, what matters really is we're making this for modders, and the modders are the community. They're so much more than the creators that sit in dozens of Discord servers, and I'm part of those Discord servers, and I enjoy those Discord servers, and I have a great time talking to people and talking to yourself. But there's a much larger world out there, which is the what we're creating for. And I think that if we fail to capture those people or please those people, we have failed on some fundamental level. So I guess what the Frontier has taught us as a mod team, and probably taught nearly every other big mod team, and I've talked extensively with the Long 15 devs kind of around these kind of topics before, is we just have to be very, very careful with the kind of content we're making. And when I say that, I'm not referring to any of the controversy. What I'm referring to is making sure it stays true to what people's idea of Fallout is, which is, to kind of bring it briefly back to the name change. That was another reason that the New West kind of appealed to us because, it sounds like a Fallout name. It's a
Mhm.
name that someone who picks up a PC Gamer article someday and goes, "Oh, there's a Van Buren remake. What's it called? Oh, the New West. Yeah, that kind of sounds right." That doesn't, it just I think there are certain things that we should be trying to cleave to ensure that people will interact with our game in good faith. And I think that's the main lesson that I learned from the Frontier personally. It's that once you have lost that first impression, and once people have bad faith interpretations of what you're doing, it's a very, very, very hard hill to overcome. You can contrast the Frontier, I think, very effectively with London, which is the other similarly sized released project. I'm not forgetting New California, to be clear. I actually am also a great fan of New California, but it's a bit earlier, and I think unfortunately went a bit under the radar, which I think is a huge shame, considering how good the start of it is. But to digress, I think London rode the wave of community sentiment really, really well, and I think they utilized it to get great engagement with what they want. And you see it now. They've released a DLC that's been really well received. They have constant kind of positive feedback from the community, and they're able to build upon it. And it's probably more importantly, and to kind of contextualize the Frontier within the New Vegas modding scene, London success has probably spawned 15 more large total game conversion size mods for Fallout 4. Now, 14 of those would probably collapse within a year, but one of them might make it to the end, and that's a great thing. I think the main unfortunate effect, and I don't blame anyone on the Frontier team for this, I think it's completely beyond their control, is the backlash against the Frontier has caused people making mods of our size, myself included, and my team included, our team included, is it's made us slightly warier and slightly more cautious of kind of pushing the boat out too far or running afoul of that community sentiment. Now, I should say as well, and this is potentially a slightly controversial thing to say, Fallout 2 had several things in it that were way sillier than the Frontier and way more ridiculous, and no one blinks an eye at it. It's all about perception. So I think for us, our main thing will be delivering a product that people can engage with honestly and really truly enjoy for what it is. And then, with the slightly more esoteric stuff, like for example, we're going to have some alien related things in the mod. Um, you know, eh, Jesus, the game has Roswell in it, for God's sake. We can't ignore Roswell.
Yeah, exactly.
And like there are going to be certain things that some people might roll their eyes at, and that's completely fine. But we are trying to develop within the ethos that Fallout 1 and 2 kind of left for us. To kind of answer the second part of your question, uh, you know, how has it impacted like our process? I'm very, very happy to report that we have, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, we have a very, very structured way of approaching our development, and it's borne us dividends in terms of how we produce. And just this is, I guess, more of a call out for the general like modding community as opposed to the modder community. You know, I'd love for people to have a look at how we kind of structure things. We have a completely stacked Google Drive. Um, with every world space, I alluded to the world spaces earlier. We have a very specific process when it comes to designing our world spaces, which functions in a very structural way. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to explain, please. We kind of begin at the top level. I kind of compare this to building a pyramid. Toshi is how I would describe it usually to the guys. Um, we start with our area documents, which are kind of our foundational documents, which are basically we take the original dev documents concerning the world space and we expand, flesh out, and 3Dify, for lack of a better term, it into a form that we can utilize in the GEC, basically. Once we've established those baselines, we'll move on and we'll flesh out the factions that are within that world space. Once that's done, we'll move on and flesh out the NPCs that are within that world space. Once that's done, we'll go and flesh out the quests in a narrative sense, describe what they are, their endings, different ways of completing them. Once that's done, we will do the quest flow documents, describe the stages, describe the different branching choices. When that's done, we will do the dialogue, write out what people are saying, any misc text or kind of ambient dialogue or text that's floating around the area. For example, at the moment, I finished up writing a load of graffiti for Tibbet's prison just a couple of days ago, just by way of example. And then, kind of alongside that process, there'll be an extensive GEC side thing happening, which will involve obviously the level design, cluttering, scripting, implementation, nav meshing, model addition, acquisition, all that kind of stuff. So it all happens in a very structured, flowing way. And to bring it back to the Frontier, I think the main lesson we saw from its release, its successful release, because it did release successfully, that's important to say, and that's better than most major mod projects. They were structured in their approach, and I think that's something that we've really taken to heart, and it's borne great dividends for us. I think the fact that we're going to be able to release two pretty large demos within a year of each other is testament to the fact that we have a pretty well structured process. And sorry, that was a very, very long-winded answer to your question.
I mean, it's important because one of the things that a lot of people, maybe not a lot of, but like a number of people criticize the Frontier with, or the original project, was sort of maybe not having like enough of those steps to where it's like, hey, is this something that works in the larger story, or as like a game design thing works in the larger, like, world space or gameplay style? Like one of the things that and I'm not going to go into it because I don't like talking too much about like the more negative aspects of a project, especially when it's a project like the Frontier that has so much like potential to it. But there's one part in the game that got a little bit of controversy, where effectively the point behind it was to sort of like show the player like, oh, hey, like there won't, like, not every single speech option is going to be like, the right way to go about, in engaging with the story or a character or, this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, that's an interesting way to approach that, but you don't utilize it anywhere else in the game except this one moment. And it doesn't connect to anything else. But with this process that you're talking about, not only in the sense of like world design, but you have all these additional layers and all these additional steps, not just for, safety in your design document, but also in like constantly checking your own work. Like, okay, does this have a point? Does this have a meaning? Does this go somewhere? If any of those answers are no, it does. Yeah, it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about consistency of approach, and I think one of my own personal criticisms I'd levy against the Frontier is there was, in some cases, quite large inconsistency between different writing styles, and as that's actually a great example when you pointed out about the a speech check leading to a wrong place. It's very important that there is consistency when it comes to things of that nature, because you establish a expectation then with the player, and if you don't follow up on that expectation, it feels bad. A great example that we had personally was low intelligence dialogue. I'm sure you're familiar. In Fallout 1 and 2, there was basically a low intelligence option for nearly every piece of dialogue, where if your intelligence is under 3, you could respond in some sort of like idiotic way to any kind of quest. It's great. Fallout 1 and 2 have about, well, when we're finished, it'll probably have about 15% of the dialogue we will have. It would have been completely unfeasible to implement low intelligence dialogue in a mass scale across the game in a way that's satisfying. So the kind of compromise, because we do love the idea, the compromise we've kind of settled on is in terms of main quest line moments, we will have options occasionally where a low intelligence character can do certain things, and also in terms of like skill checks, message box pop-ups. We have a slightly funny situation where in Burm Springs you can approach the NCR captain who's kind of organizing the siege, and he has a job for he has a classic RPG. He's like, oh, can you go clear out these jackals? But the thing is, he doesn't really want to send you there because he thinks you're just a random civilian. He thinks you're going to get killed. But if you have low intelligence, you can basically convince him you're so stupid. He'll just be like, okay, I'll just send him to get rid of him. You know what I mean? So like stuff of that nature. But yeah, no, I think consistency of approach in the dialogue and across our characters is really important. There will be. We actually also took example of that speech checks leading to a bad outcome, but we've used it in a very specific sense. There's a certain character you meet in the Twin Mothers world space, which is this large valley in the Rio Grande in southern Colorado, who's an incredibly manipulative, very, very dangerous kind of serial killer type character. Very charismatic. And that's a scenario in which, your speech checks you think are going someplace are actually kind of being twisted against you, but it will be, we hope anyway, it'll be presented in such a way that it'll be very obvious to the player that this is an unusual situation that they kind of have to overcome, as opposed to something that, we just threw this in here randomly and then forgot about it and never brought it up again. And I think, and to be fair, they are volunteer projects, and the editorial side of my job as lead writer is endless, and we're actually very, very lucky to have someone on the team who seemingly enjoys editing. I don't know, I've never met anyone like it in my life, but they really do enjoy editing people. They love correcting spelling mistakes, they love checking grammar, and it's genuinely a huge help when it comes to particularly the dialogue. So shout out to them. Thank God for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. Interesting point.
There was a quip I was gonna make, but I can't remember what it was. Let's talk about Fallout Prime. So Fallout Prime, the new episode, has been out for about 3 days at this point. Yeah, because this is going to be dropping on Friday, and the first episode of the season dropped on Wednesday. What did you think of the new episode? Details.
I thought it was fantastic.
That's not specific.
I thought it was the greatest single piece of television that's ever been put to screen. I thought it was crazy that they traveled to Canada and then to the moon, and then the Enclave showed up and
they did the Fortnite dance.
And there was a Star Wars cameo. She was kind of terrible. Now I'm saying it out loud. So I enjoyed the first season. There was a very oblique reference to Fallout Tactics in it, which I enjoyed personally.
Yeah, in the first season?
Yeah, they mentioned like Vault Zero. They mentioned like maybe it was the corporate vault. I can't remember actually. I'm making a fool of myself here. It might have been a Brotherhood of Steel reference, which we have actually. I will open this up to your commenters / people watching this video. Should we reference or canonize Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, the infamous Texan version of the game in Van Buren? Because it's an endless debate we've had amongst ourselves whether we should allude to it or not. I will also mention we are planning on alluding to Fallout Sonora because we have great affection and love for that project. I know people involved that would probably never see this because they're Russian and are very in their own community, and that's fine. But no, we really would love to allude to certain aspects of that game.
Just put one like crumpled can of Ball soda in like a trash can in like the most like randomest location.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Right.
If people recall a crashed Nuka-Cola truck in Fallout 1 as a random encounter, I'm sure they can extrapolate from that.
They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. Yeah, I think they'll figure something out eventually.
So it's interesting though, because I to your point, Vault Zero, I don't remember that specifically, but it could just be me forgetting a specific detail, because that kind of sounds like a terminal thing. But one of the interesting things is that from the trailer, one of the trailers, I think it was the first major trailer. We see two of the Brotherhood blimps crashing into each other. And I saw a lot of people saying that, like, oh, that's either like a reference, or they're like actually properly canonizing Fallout Tactics, because that was a thing that happened in Fallout Tactics.
Sure.
A couple of the Brotherhood's blimps crashed into each other, like over the divide, or something like that. So it's one, if that's true, that's kind of neat.
Pretty dope. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, and like, I don't know, to the point that you brought up, I also like really enjoyed the first season. I'm a bit of a movie buff, and like you, a writer. So I have like very particular tastes when it comes to stories. There's just some games where it's like games and movies where it's like, yeah, I think I probably would, like, on like just looking at everything on the surface, like that seems like something I would really enjoy. I just can't get into it. Just
I feel the same.
Yeah,
I have similar feelings for several things. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to the first season of Fallout Prime, it's not the greatest thing ever written.
No, it has problems.
Yeah,
absolutely, it has problems. Yeah.
Ella Purnell's eyes they're not big enough. They need to get bigger.
No, that's true. They aren't big enough. That's an excellent point. Yeah, they gotta invest in some sort of AI solution to make her eyes bigger. I agree.
I got somebody in my server that, like, every once in a while he'll say, like, you know how they make Fallout better? Just like every season or every episode, just make Ella Purnell's eyes 20% bigger. And like never mention it, never point it out.
Never been yeah.
But yeah, so like the first season, like for a TV show, just like a TV show at face value, it was good. It was good. It was good. It was. If I were to give it like a grade, I'd probably say like a B-. You know,
yeah, okay,
solid.
Yeah, I agree.
B-, C+. As a Fallout property, I think it would probably be still at like a B+, because like it wasn't the greatest thing related to the show. You know what? I'd probably say maybe like a B+, like A-, because like, again,
it has a couple of as a lore buff / nerd / idiot. There are several things that I kind of inherently dislike about certain parts of the premise. I really didn't like that they moved Shady Sands. I really didn't like how they portrayed the NCR. And I generally didn't particularly enjoy how they portrayed the Boneyard. But they are things, put it this way, if they had just set the show in like Colorado or something, it probably would have been like an A for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there were certain, and I recognize, I watched the show with my partner and like my friends who are non-follow people, and they loved it. So I recognize that my problems with the show are mostly rooted in curmudgeon, being a curmudgeon and being a bit of a lower person.
Yeah, and like that's the interesting thing. If you're not a Fallout fan, it's fantastic. If you are a Fallout fan, it's either great or it's kind of like, eh. Or if you're like those Fallout fans, it's the worst thing ever to exist ever, and just more proof.
They need to go outside really badly. Yeah, I don't think we have any of those kind of people on our project. Thank God. They need oxygen and grass.
Right.
Those people. Anyway,
so
I digress.
Grass. But
yeah,
one of the interesting things with the TV show is the fact that it's a TV show, and more so specifically, it's a TV show that's going to have, from what we've sort of heard as like rumors, probably at least like 5-6 seasons, maybe 7. And like, one, that's a whole fucking hell of a lot. And two, the fact that it's a TV show means that there's like specific things that they can sort of like introduce in like the early episodes or the early seasons, and then sort of like push down the line a little bit to when they become more like story relevant and like finish the
Sure.
second part of that conversation. So like the NCR, for example, like they blew up Shady Sands and everything. People were freaking out about that. There were so many irritating conversations about that goddamn chalkboard. And it's like, oh, they like completely destroyed Shady Sands. The NCR is gone as a faction. It's just like these 5 dudes left. But then we see an NCR Ranger in the trailer for Fallout New Vegas. And it's like, is she just some random NCR Ranger who's just decided like, well, everything's fucked. I might as well just stay at Camp Gulf until I die or whatever. Like, this is where I live, which is a possibility. But it seems interesting that she would be there in NCR gear and also seemingly know who Cooper Howard is, which could be a whole nother thing in and of itself. But it sort of is kind of hinting that the NCR is still around,
Sure.
but it's not something that we have like confirmation of. And again, because it's a TV show, that could be something that is going to be like a major thing later on, right? So maybe like this war that's coming that that they talked about, or that voice in the trailer said, maybe that's the war between, you know, the Brotherhood, who now has the cold fusion device, and the NCR, who want the cold fusion device and now have a much more dire reason for having the device, so that they can, you know, rebuild their whole thing after losing their capital and everything, and probably going through a massive, you know, crisis in their own nation, and be like, hey, we need energy. You don't need it. You guys suck. And, you know, yada, yada, yada. On that though, who do you think the voice is?
Question. Geez, I really have no idea. I I don't. If what you're getting at is, do I think it's a character, like a character from the games? I don't think so. I think it'll be a new
You
character.
think it's like a new character?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I could
don't
definitely
know.
see that.
I don't know. Like I am very interested to see what they're going to do with Vegas. I'm kind of assuming. I know everyone's saying, "Oh, they're canonizing a house ending and all that." I think it's probably more likely they're going to do kind of what New Vegas did with Fallout 2, where they'll kind of pick and choose a smattering of endings
Yeah.
to make like a cohesive whole. I think that's more likely. Um,
Well, that's like one of the things that, because like like a couple days ago, as of the time of recording this, not at the time of release. At the time of release, we'll probably know exactly what's going on.
Sure.
But as of the time of this recording, like a couple days ago, the producer Jonathan Nolan came out and basically said, like, we're not canonizing an ending. We're creating sort of like, we're going for like this fog of war approach, where because like it's been like 15 years since
Sure.
the ending of New Vegas. So they're basically putting, like, framing the events in such a way to where it's like, it's not something that is super relevant to our current story. This is a story about, you know, Lucy, Maximus, and the Ghoul, not about, you know, New Vegas and who's going to be in charge of the region and stuff like that after the second battle of
Sure.
River Dam. And two, forgot what 2 was. Oh, yes. And 2, because it's set so long after the events of New Vegas, it doesn't really matter because so much other stuff has happened. And so there's sort of like arguments that can be made for, like, you know, again, House, Yes Man can a little bit be argued. The NCR can be strongly argued. I think it would be harder just based on what we've seen at this point.
Deletion's unlikely. Yeah.
Yeah. But like,
Yeah.
they're still there. So they're still, like, you know, giving it the old college try. But I think from what we've seen, it's harder to say that like they won.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't really matter as much to the current story. But like you said, I do think they are going to go about it in more of like, you know, this could have happened, but then things went wrong. That could have
Yes.
happened, but then things went
I also
wrong.
think I also think that I think people care weight doesn't matter if they canonize an ending to me. People can still enjoy the game. It doesn't change anything. It just that's just you know what I mean. Like personally, it doesn't matter at all to me. I always kind of assumed anyway that some variety of a house slash NCR ending was the likeliest canon ending to Vegas anyway, just logically because that's the one that seems to make the most sense. A Legion one is unlikely because of the implications, and a Yes Man one is also kind of complicated because it so heavily involves the player character. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they canonized ending for Fallout 3. You know, it doesn't really matter hugely to me. I don't know.
Yeah. I well, you see, them not canonizing an ending, it's just more evidence that Bethesda hates New
Yeah, sure.
Vegas and hates Obsidian.
True.
Shut the fuck up.
Maybe we'll be accused of hating New Vegas because we're making a game that will contradict the events of New Vegas.
Exactly.
Several,
Yeah.
they'll hate us because our version of the NCR is like 13% different from the Vegas version.
There. One NCR soldier is going to refer to a higher up officer who just so happens to be female by saying she, and then they're just going to say, "Oh, this mod's woke. Woke. It's cancel it. It's gone woke."
Yeah, true. We're done. Yeah, true.
But when it comes to Fallout Prime, one of the big arguments that I've seen specifically around like, oh, like New Vegas is all like destroyed and everything. There's no canon answer or anything. It's just Bethesda once again destroying everything, like never allowing anything to advance, and stuff like that, and just keeping everybody in like tin shacks and like fucking drinking water out of irradiated rivers and spigots and stuff like that. And the one time when they actually let it advance, when you see Shady Sands and it's got like, trolleys and more modern looking buildings, like, oh, they nuked it. Oh, I guess everybody just has to stay living in the dirt. And it's really weird that they make that argument around New Vegas specifically because, to be fair, it's been a while since I played The Lonesome Road, but I'm pretty sure The Lonesome Road pretty explicitly spelled out that there's a big, massive gun already pointing at the Mojave that's just loaded with tunnelers that are like stronger than Deathclaws. So it's like, Bethesda destroyed it. Like they sort of already propped up that they was going to be destroyed anyway, or that like it was really going to get hit hard. Now it's just getting hit hard by something a little bit different.
Yeah, well, like I suppose it's not an entirely invalid criticism to point out that Bethesda is obsessed with reverting the wasteland to a wasteland state. But if you're going to be logically consistent, you have to say the exact same for Chris Avellone, who people laud as a genius. And I am a fan of Chris Avellone, but like as you correctly pointed out, Lonesome Road, which is basically Avellone fan fiction, did the exact same thing that Bethesda does, which is to say that this is all coming to end. Like in Van Buren, San Francisco was nuked by the Enclave.
Which, ironically enough, is something that they wanted to do. Like that was a bit of lore that they wanted to write into Fallout New Vegas. But guess who said no? Don't do that.
Yeah, because Bethesda's going to make Fallout 5 in San Francisco. I'm calling it right here.
Yeah, everybody's been calling it for months. Like it's the most logical. Sure. It's the most logical point because like it's either that, New York, which isn't as likely.
I don't think it'll be New York.
No, or New Orleans, which is just the thing that the fans want. And
it's
like,
not,
we're not going to do that.
That would be cool as hell. I'd love that, but it's not going to be that.
It's not.
I would say it's San Fran, New York, maybe Chicago.
That'd be cool.
And then a smattering of New Orleans, Seattle, Miami. It's going to be San Francisco. I'm nearly 100% sure.
Yeah.
I nearly bet money on it. If I could bet money on it, I'd bet money on it. Put it that way. And I'm not a gambling addict, I swear. You know?
Yeah, I swear. Please, you want to put a wager on it? Huh? You want?
Yeah.
One of the places that I think would be to sort of like derail for a little bit. One of the places that I think would be really cool as the setting for a Fallout game would be Denver, would be Dog City.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be cool.
because they talk
Well,
so much about how like, you can't really like go down to ground level because there's just so many like dogs just everywhere, like wild dogs. So you have to travel over like, the highways and stuff. And especially traveling on some of the highway systems in Fallout 4, that sounds so fucking cool, right? Because like you're on these like big like tracks of like metal and rock and concrete that are like hundreds of feet up in the air, and it's like on a tighter location, so like people have to like build like more condensedly, and it's like they like lead into the city and stuff, and then that leads to like more stuff. But like it's just such an interesting way to go about traveling, like specifically on like the highways and stuff, because especially with how like iconic like road travel is in general in like apocalyptic settings, having that set like higher up because there's specifically like a big like dangerous thing below you, which in this instance is just packs of wild dogs.
mhm,
um
yeah.
it creates a much it specifically adds a lot more verticality to Fallout, which is what they did in Fallout 4, and I think could just be like further improved upon, like maybe a little bit of
Sure.
like parkour, nothing too crazy, but just adds that like additional layer of gameplay design and potential and stuff.
Yeah, well, you'd be glad to hear, our game when released will have Denver in it, and we've fleshed out skyscrapers. We've talked extensively about how we want the city to feel, the verticality. There's actually a great example in Fallout London where a sky and Fallout 4 does this as well. To be fair, a skyscraper has crashed into another skyscraper,
Mhm.
and kind of the mixing of those two floors and moving between those two buildings is a great kind of set piece. I think DC does it excuse me, DC does it semi regularly. I wish it did it more
Mhm.
personally, but no, it is something we are absolutely going to kind of get at. And if I may talk briefly about kind of maybe the more factions we're going to have in the game, the hangdogs, who we will be representing as a kind of medieval style set of dynastic families within the city, whose family surnames correspond to dog breeds.
Mm.
Um, so they'll be controlling different parts of the city. They'll have a king. In fact, one of the main quests of the game, involves tracking down prisoners, and one of those prisoners you're tracking down is the crown prince of the hangdogs, who has fled because he is frightened of the responsibility of the throne. Um, so Denver's going to be a real. I think I'm hoping Denver is going to be a real eye capturing part of the game to our players. I hope it's one of those places that people want to return to again and again. And the atmosphere, and we've talked a lot about inside the team about how we want Denver to feel, how we want to even reach Denver. For example, we had a whole idea, because in terms of our game map, Denver's kind of shoved up in the northeast corner, and it's surrounded by some pretty like dangerous territory. We had a thought that we might make the Rocky Mountains quite hazardous to get over, which kind of funnels you in one direction when it comes to Denver, which would be the Allegiant territory. So we kind of have some story beats planned around that. So yeah, no, Denver is something we're really really looking forward to showing off. And I should say actually, and I hope you don't mind, if you would like to see teaser images and stuff of that nature that relate to that, you should join our Discord, which I'm presuming will be linked below. We have a endless repository of teaser images and posts and stuff of that nature that kind of give a visual representation of what I've been talking about here today.
Perfect. Absolutely excellent. There you go. You got an invite right there to the Discord server. When it comes to and you mentioned partially how like this is still a long form project. You're still quite a ways from being like completely finished with the game and stuff. So, or with the mod, and have been, developing the mod for a while now at this point. When it comes to when it comes to newer games and newer projects, so like Fallout 76, Fallout Prime, I guess at this point it would technically be added with a question mark. Fallout 5. So like, is your mod going to be completed before Fallout 5, or is Fallout 5 going to come out before? Who knows? But with new content and new canon media that's coming out, that has come out, that will continue to come out over the lifespan of this project, how have new stories, new bits of lore, new bits of information about the Fallout world, how has that sort of shaped the way you personally, the development team for the New West, how have these newer elements helped to shape the way that you approach writing stories, approach designing for the world specifically, and how you go about interacting with the lore of the series?
Sure.
And how will it going into the future, obviously?
Good question. I suppose, again, I feel like I use Van Buren as a shield sometimes, but the fact that we are very much developing in the vein of the classic games, and, for us, everything beyond Fallout Tactics, potentially Brotherhood of Steel, doesn't exist, right? So, like, technically, in 2253, the year our game is set in, the Brotherhood should be over in Washington. That hasn't happened in our version, right? So new content and new lore additions, they don't really affect us in the exact same way that potentially other mods would. Now, in terms of, spiritual representation and like inspiration, absolutely, yeah. Like, we have a faction in the game called the UAF, the Un-American Activities Force, they're a secret police, a pre-war secret police that will have kind of a treasure hunt type situation happening throughout the game, where you're kind of picking up tapes and getting some insight into the pre-war characters in the mod. Not to go too deep into spoilers, but our main villain, Victor Presper, he's a bit more than what he tells us, for lack of a better term. He might be a bit older, wink wink, than he is claiming to be. So there are certain aspects of that, and stuff like the Secret Service armor that was introduced in 76 that really captured our imagination. As regards our UAF guys. So we were like, oh, wouldn't that be really cool if part of our treasure hunt quest maybe led to this Secret Service armor at the end. So stuff like that, maybe more aesthetic elements is stuff that it has inspired us, less so than lore developments on factions that we have, because fundamentally, our big five, for lack of a better term, our big five factions that are in the game, the New Canaanites, the NCR, the Brotherhood, the Legion, and the Daughters of Hecate, they kind of exist in their own bubble that isn't really affected hugely by later lore developments, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because again, it's like it's an isolated story built off of a existing story, an existing skeleton.
Sure.
But more so, I think, with Fallout 76 as being like a much more influential title, because it does take place the earliest in the timeline. Obviously, like, again, design aspects when it comes to like armor, or just like the aesthetics of the world itself could have an influence. Obviously, it's on a completely different time zone from from Appalachia, but like bits and pieces of dialogue maybe shaped or maybe changed based on just things that are happening. We know something about like the Rust King in Burning Springs, or fucking Taggarty's Thunder with the Brotherhood of Steel, the Fire Breathers, the Responders, all these things. Obviously, a lot of these aren't going to actually be in the game, but the echoes of events ripple across the country and change things and influence things. And while the influence in some areas might be smaller, they do still have influence. And so like from a story perspective, it's always interesting, especially for a game like this, to see sort of like what sort of creative approach you guys are thinking about when it comes to these echoes and these vibrations
Yeah.
from other segments of the world.
And I
Um,
think as well, it's important and nice, I think, for players to be able to have head canons as well. You know, if they would like to think that the Brotherhood sent an expedition while they're playing the New West across to, you know, um, to the East Coast, that's entirely fine. You know, we're not gonna explicitly, we don't want to, you know, shit in anyone's parade for that, for a better term, being like, no,
right.
this didn't
Yeah.
happen. But we probably won't explicitly allude to or mention. It is interesting, actually, kind of around what you're saying. New Vegas has come up multiple times in terms of like, none of our game map takes place in New Vegas. Like the Mojave, we're on the other side of the river very firmly, but like, you know, what is happening in the Mojave in 2253? You know, the NCR Brotherhood War is raging at the moment. You know, is House awake? Is what's the city of New Vegas doing? Do you know, these are questions that we kind of have to grapple with, and they're the kind of things that will probably make more of an appearance in terms of lore, and something that a New Vegas player might go, oh right, you know, like for example, we will allude to the pre, I guess, houseification version of the Strip families,
Mhm.
as tribes in the area, that are moving around. We will probably allude to, you know, Helios One in certain senses. We'll allude to skirmishes between the Brotherhood and the NCR in the area. So there'll be oblique, I guess, is the word I would use, references to events that may happen. But in a general sense, we are very much trying to exist in a world where none of this has happened yet. It's 2003. You know, the last main Fallout game was in 1999, and we're following up on that game, and we're kind of trying to tell that story that they intended going forward, if
Right.
that makes sense. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. To sort of like wrap things up, was there any additional bits of information or additional things as far as like the modding team or its production or its design philosophy or anything like that, or the way you're approaching like developing the story of Van Buren? Was there any additional things that you wanted to talk about and cover?
to be honest, I think we covered a lot of ground there. I think that was good. We kind of, I hope people get a feel of kind of what we're going for from this conversation. Just I suppose to in brief kind of allude to, you know, I guess the story, that the overall thematic, um, you know, elements that we're kind of trying to get across here. Like, one of our main themes in the game is that, you know, no one and nothing is, you know, disposable, and that's something that the villains would espouse in the opposite sense quite clearly, that, you know, humanity has served its purpose, it's time to move on. You know, a very Fallouty sentiment, for a villain to have. It's you know, it's ground that's been trod on before by the Master in the Enclave, but I think our spin on Presper, who's our main villain of the game, will satisfy people and will give kind of a slightly new dimension to that megalomaniacal, um, kind of, you know, extermination, genocidal kind of view that many classic Fallout villains seem to have. We hope that, you know, people enjoy it. In terms of like set pieces, you know, we are going to go to space, I should say. It's in the Van Buren dev docs. You go to space at a certain point. We are planning a a Titanfall style drop potentially, out of space, which is again why I appeal to Zelandro and Hitman. That would be a very difficult thing to animate. um, but yeah, we're getting there. You know, we'll have, just in terms of content, we'll obviously have hundreds, Jesus, probably thousands of new weapons and armors, different models, classic models. We really want to, in as much as possible, classicify that 3D world space as possible. You know, there are several people who are owed, you know, special credit for that. Web Productions has been invaluable in terms of the help and, you know, content he's allowed us to use. Jesus, there's so many. ZL Arms. I'd actually be here all day if I named them. Uh, Probably one of the hardest parts of my job, Toshi, is updating the credits list. I'm worried how long the credits are going to take. We're going to need like 7 songs, I feel, to cover the credits at the end.
I believe
Um,
it.
yeah, and I suppose just to kind of wrap up, I'd like to obviously, thank everyone on the team for all their incredibly hard work. Jesus, again, if I was to thank everyone individually, I'd be here all day. But just I really, really appreciate the work we've done so far, and I've really been enjoying this. This is the first really big mod project that I've worked on personally, and it's been a great experience. It's so exciting. Literally today, before I hopped on this call, we finally got one of our robot models that we've been waiting on rigged, basically to mean Toshi that they're ready for implementation into the game. A warden bot. So really, really fun. Again, I'd encourage anyone who's curious as to what it looks like, maybe join the Discord. You might get an old look at it before the demo's out. But yeah, that's kind of it, really. I hope people enjoy, the demo when it comes out. We have a slightly unique take on character creation, which I think people really like. It's funny. Well, I'd like to think it's funny. I wrote it, so I hope it's funny. Yeah, and it's very Fallouty, very humorous. Oh, I should say as well, we have contacted and I guess contracted the services of quite a large YouTuber to assist in making our intro for the game, and we're really,
Okay,
really excited
yes,
about it.
guys, it is me.
Yes,
I
it
am the
is.
one to.
It is Toshi. It is Toshi. If
It's
people are
not
curious,
though. It's not.
if,
It's somebody else. I don't know who, but like that's
well,
huge though. That's cool. You
if
you
people
get
are
a big name.
curious, including yourself, I would encourage you to look up Fallout 1 intro remake, and it's that guy. So I would encourage you to have a look, see what you think.
That sounds
And yeah,
familiar too.
we're going for a similar thing. Our big challenge at the moment, I will say, and I suppose this acts as a general call out, and maybe even to yourself, Toshi. I don't know how well you can do a Ron Perlman impression, but we are really, really struggling to find someone that can do a good Ron Perlman to read out the intro script that we've written. So if you know anyone in your world or anyone listening to this knows anyone, please reach out to me.
What are you talking about? Of course, Ron Perlman. Duh.
Yeah. If someone knows Ron Perlman, and
Right.
he'll work for free.
I mean,
let me know.
I can't remember who I got the advice from, but like I got the advice from somebody like if you can get their contacts or like their contacts, just do it. Just message them because like Neil Newborn, the guy who played Astarion in fucking Fallout in Baldur's Gate 3, he just like messaged the team like Fallout London like out of the blue and was like, "Hey, can I be in this?" And they're like, "Fuck yeah, you can." and then oh, fuck, who was it? I want it's oh fucking the oh shit, what's his name? The guy with the sunglasses in the Frontier. Tiberius Rancor. Do you know who plays Tiberius Rancor?
No idea.
The fucking it's Cyclops.
Oh really?
Yeah. From
well, I will say
from 97.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this: if Aaron Paul, by some random coincidence, is watching this, let me know.
There you go.
I've got the role of a lifetime for you, Aaron. I've got.
It'll make you a star, kid.
It'll make you a star, kid. No, I agree with that. When we reached out to this YouTuber to make our intro, I genuinely did not expect that they'd even respond.
Yeah, and again, reach out to these people because like I've worked on I've done a lot of like small time indie work. And in Portland and like the film industry, I haven't done it for like years at this point, but I used to be involved with it. And one of the guys that I was working with, who I've done a lot of stuff with, he at one point had fuck, I'm so dog shit with Bruce Campbell. He at one point had Bruce Campbell on the line, set like not him specifically, but like his agent, had him set up for like a project, and it just like unfortunately never materialized. But he was like interested, he was aware of it and stuff, and so it's like sometimes like if you're is it going to be harder to get like Ron Perlman or like some other actor? Like, yeah, probably, but like at least, shoot your shot, message, like, yeah, if you can get it, reach out to him, try like email him or whatever, like get on a fan page or something and try to get a hold of him. Cause like sometimes it's literally just about reaching out, asking and see what happens. Worst case scenario, then you got to find somebody who can, do, if not a similar thing, something in the same like tonal region. Cause like what they did with Fallout Van Buren.
That's kind of our challenge. Yeah, absolutely. That's
but
kind of the challenge
again,
we would try
like
to
he
overcome.
said, if there's anybody out there who feels like they can pull off a good Ron Perlman or Ron Perlman-esque, he already told you where the Discord is. Links are in the description.
True. Yeah, that's true. You're right.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jack, co-lead developer of Fallout, the New West. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow to be notified of future episodes, and consider subscribing to our Patreon for early access to new uploads to help keep episodes ad-free and to improve the quality and frequency of transmission. Until next time, dear listener, I thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland.